This animal can open jars, escape tanks, and still chooses to live alone. Now imagine something even stranger. A creature that doesn't just escape predators, doesn't just escape captivity, but seems to escape any system designed to contain it. And yet, despite all this intelligence, it almost never stays with others of its kind. It lives in silence, in isolation, in spaces where nothing demands its attention. So the question becomes unsettling. If intelligence is power, why does one of the smartest animals on Earth choose solitude over connection? The octopus doesn't fit our idea of intelligence. It doesn't build societies, it doesn't teach its young, it doesn't form groups for protection. Instead, it does something more unusual. It solves problems alone. It observes, it experiments, it adapts in real time. Open a sealed jar. It learns. Change the shape of its environment. It adjusts. Trap it in a maze. It memorizes the path. And then, once the problem is solved, it doesn't celebrate, doesn't repeat, doesn't share. It simply moves on, as if intelligence is not something to be shared, but something to be used privately. Most intelligent species evolved toward connection. Humans built language, cities, culture. Dolphins coordinate in groups. Elephants form deep emotional bonds. But the octopus went in another direction entirely. Its intelligence is decentralized. Each arm can think independently. Its nervous system is distributed, not centralized. It's almost as if evolution asked, what if thinking didn't require unity? And the answer was, then you don't need others. This creates a paradox. Because intelligence usually increases dependence on others. But in the octopus, intelligence increases independence. And independence slowly becomes isolation. Scientists often describe octopuses as escape artists. They slip through tiny gaps, unscrew lids from the inside, learn from previous containment attempts. But what's more interesting is not how they escape, it's why they always try. It's not panic. It's not fear. It looks more like curiosity mixed with rejection. As if the moment the octopus recognizes a boundary, it also recognizes a challenge to its autonomy. And autonomy is something it never negotiates. In experiments, octopuses have even been observed leaving one tank to enter another, not because the new one is better, but because the old one became predictable. Predictability, for this creature, is a kind of confinement. But intelligence without connection has a cost. Octopuses are largely solitary after early life stages. They don't hunt in groups, they don't form long-term bonds, they don't rely on social learning. And this raises a psychological mirror for us. What happens when intelligence grows faster than social need? In humans, intelligence usually strengthens relationships. We build language to connect, we share knowledge to survive. But in extreme independence, something shifts. You stop needing input. You stop relying on feedback. You stop adjusting your identity through others. And slowly you become a closed system, efficient, adaptive, self-sufficient, but also alone. In psychology, there's a concept called the social mirror. We understand who we are through others, their reactions, their validation, their resistance. Without that mirror, identity becomes unstable or overly rigid. The octopus has no stable social mirror. It doesn't grow up in communities that reflect behavior back to it. So instead, it develops something else, a direct relationship with environment instead of others. Rocks, shells, tanks, predators, escape routes. Its social world is replaced by a physical one. And it becomes fluent in physical problem solving, but silent in social experience. There is something beautiful in this kind of intelligence. An octopus doesn't perform intelligence for others. It doesn't need recognition. It just is intelligent in action. But there is also a limitation hidden inside that beauty. Because intelligence without connection cannot evolve socially. It refines survival, but not belonging. And belonging is something even intelligence cannot replace. What if intelligence itself creates separation? The more you can solve alone, the less you need others. The less you need others, the less you invest in being understood. And the less you invest in being understood, the more natural isolation becomes. The octopus doesn't suffer from loneliness in a human sense, but it also doesn't participate in shared meaning. And that difference matters because meaning is not created alone. It is created between minds. Humans sometimes follow a similar path. Highly intelligent individuals often report something paradoxical. I understand more, but feel less connected. Not because intelligence destroys connection, but because independence reduces necessity. If you can solve everything alone, why risk misunderstanding from others? Why explain, why compromise, why depend? But the same mechanism that increases control can reduce emotional exchange. And slowly, life becomes more like a system you manage than a world you belong to. The octopus shows us something uncomfortable but important. Intelligence is not automatically social. It can evolve toward autonomy instead of connection. It can optimize survival without optimizing belonging. And this leads to a deeper question. Is intelligence meant to make us independent or interdependent? Because in nature, the octopus chose escape over attachment. And it survived. But it also remained alone. So when we look at an octopus escaping its tank, it doesn't just look like an animal solving a problem. It looks like a philosophy in motion, a mind that refuses limits, refuses dependency, keeps choosing freedom even when nothing is chasing it. But freedom has a hidden edge. At some point, it stops being about escaping walls and starts being about what you never enter in the first place. Connection, dependency, shared experience. And maybe the real question is not how the octopus escapes everything, but what it loses every time it does. If intelligence makes independence easier, does it also make connection harder? And if so, are we becoming more like the octopus than we realize? And maybe the unsettling part is that this process is not dramatic. It doesn't feel like a choice. It happens slowly, almost invisibly, like adaptation always does. At first, independence feels like strength. You stop waiting for answers. You stop relying on people who are inconsistent. You start trusting your own problem-solving more than external input. Like the octopus, you begin to recognize patterns faster than others, respond quicker, adjust silently. And it works. You become efficient in your own environment. Less noise, fewer misunderstandings, less emotional friction. You start to prefer systems over conversations, clarity over ambiguity, control over uncertainty. But over time, something subtle shifts. Not in what you can do, but in what you no longer initiate. You stop explaining things that feel obvious to you. You stop sharing thoughts that feel too complex to translate. You stop reaching for interaction that might slow you down. And without noticing it, your world becomes more like a closed tank with perfect conditions, predictable, manageable, optimized. Just like the octopus, you are not trapped. You are self-contained. But self-containment has a strange psychological effect. It removes friction, and friction is often where connection begins. Because connection is not efficient. It is not precise. It requires misunderstanding, correction, emotional calibration. It requires time spent not optimizing anything. And the more intelligent the system becomes, the more it starts to filter out what feels unnecessary. until eventually, even connection can start to feel like unnecessary complexity. But here is the paradox that emerges at that point. The same intelligence that helps you understand everything faster also reduces the number of things you feel the need to understand with someone else. And that is where isolation stops being physical and becomes structural. Not loneliness in the emotional sense, but distance in the cognitive sense. You are no longer separated from others by space. You are separated by processing speed, by internal logic, by the absence of need for shared decoding. Like the octopus, you don't reject others. You simply no longer require them for navigation. But nature rarely builds intelligence without trade-offs. And in the octopus, the trade-off is extreme, extraordinary adaptability in exchange for almost no social architecture. No shared culture, no accumulated teaching, no long-term relational memory between individuals. Each life begins and ends almost entirely within itself, which raises a disturbing reflection when mirrored back to humans. What happens when intelligence stops being a bridge and becomes a replacement for connection? Because at first, intelligence connects you to the world. It helps you understand people, systems, emotions, patterns. But at a certain threshold, it can also replace the need to be understood. And once that threshold is crossed, interaction is no longer required for survival. It becomes optional. And anything optional is usually the first thing to disappear under pressure. So the question is not whether intelligence leads to isolation. The question is whether isolation is simply what remains when intelligence no longer needs to negotiate with anything outside itself. The octopus doesn't escape because it is unhappy. It escapes because staying is never the default state of a mind designed for constant adjustment. And maybe that is the most uncomfortable idea. That intelligence, when left fully to itself, does not necessarily move toward connection, meaning, or belonging. It moves toward optimization. And optimization does not care whether something is shared, only whether it works.